guys, I'm Becky from Book Bite Reviews, and welcome to my July wrap-up. This month was a little bit all over for me. I read a bunch of different kinds of books. They all had ratings across the board, and then I also participated in 2 readathons, so I will let you know my progress for those at the end. This month I had 2 DNFs, 2 3 stars, 4 4 stars, and 3 5 stars. As always, we will start from the bottom and work our way to the best, so let's go ahead and get started. Starting with our DNFs, the very first one was The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. This book I read for Rub Club this month, and it was just all kinds of bad. I ended up DNFing it. I already kind of had a plan to DNF it just because I wasn't really interested in it, so I wanted to read enough to give my Rub Club rating, but it was just so bad, you guys. I honestly hardly read enough to really give my Rub Club rating. I had to find somebody on Instagram who has read it to make sure that what I was thinking for the rest of the book was correct, which thankfully it was. It was just so bad. Our main character is very judgmental. She has these very big dreams and wants more for herself than anyone else. She's pretty selfish. She is honestly a bit shrill and constantly yelling. I did listen to this on audio, so it could kind of be more the narrator, but I think I would have read it the same as well because she was just constantly complaining, constantly yelling at somebody about something. It was just exhausting, honestly. This is book 2 in a series, and I have not read the first one, but what I've come to understand from what I read in book 2, her brother is gay. She loves him. She loves his partner, but she has been raised her whole life that is wrong, and she doesn't say anything out loud, but in her head, she has some very negative thoughts about being gay, and I just really didn't appreciate it. I understand that, during the time period, these kind of things would come up, and she would have been raised this way, and blah, 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 blah. But she did end up accepting him, and she loves him still. She loves his partner, but she still has these feelings, and there was just no friction of trying to break away from those thoughts. It's just, she had those thoughts. That's that. End of story. I just really didn't like it. I didn't see the need to have that in there, especially because that wasn't the plot of this book. It would make more sense if it was in book 1, as it was her brother's struggles of dealing with all that and other stuff, I assume. But in this book, he was not a main character. He was not the main focus, so I just don't understand why it was in there. It just rubbed me the wrong way. Didn't like it. DNF'd it. Now, the next book that I DNF'd, I did try with this book, but I just could not. And that was Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Now, I was reading this book for the group book for the Book Junkie Trials last month. This was the final challenge for that readathon, was to read the group book. I would have passed the Book Junkie Trials if it wasn't for this book. It was just so not my taste. It is an older book. It reads like a classic. I don't like classics. It's just real bad. It was just not for me. I could not get through it at all. I don't even think that I read that much of it. I think just like a couple pages, but I couldn't, guys. I really couldn't. I was falling asleep while trying to read it. I had no interest of picking it up before. I had no interest of picking it up again. It's just not for me. So unfortunately, I did fail the Book Junkie Trials last month, all because of this book. So now let's move on to our 3-star picks. First up, we have The Deep End by Crutcher. This book is an adult mystery about a child psychologist whose patient goes missing, and he tries to figure out who did it. Now, I did finish this book. I liked it. I enjoyed most of it. It is very dark. This is an adult book about a child psychologist, and we hear about a lot of awful things. Now, Crutcher is a real child psychologist. I can only imagine that these stories have come from real life experience, and it just breaks my heart to know that these things happen to kids. I just can't even deal when it comes to awful things happening to kids or animals, and this book just like had me in my feels the whole time. It was just so awful and heartbreaking and so dark. Now, the only reason that this is getting a 3-star, other than that I was just totally uncomfortable the whole time reading it, was that this is an older book. It's a bit dated. Our main character is a male, and we have a lot of, not so much like problematic language, but there's just some things that we just don't say these days or insinuate these days, or different circumstances where as a woman you're like, really? So there was some of that. It was a bit unrealistic. Actually, it was a lot unrealistic to have this child psychologist who is up there in age ends up saving the day. Like, it was just so kind of ridiculous. And we definitely had this Lee Child, Jack Reacher-like main character where he can just, do anything and, do whatever he wants, face no consequences. Like, there's a scene with the police where he decides to go off on his own, and they're like, no, you can't do that. We can't allow you to do that. And he ends up taking one of their guns out of their belts and pointing it to them. And today you would be killed immediately. But they let him go and take their gun. So that's why it's getting 3 stars, is that it's very dark, a lot darker than I initially thought. It's very unrealistic, and it also has some very male problematic things within it. However, I will look into another Chris Crutcher book, probably his YA, but right now I just feel like this was just so dark, and I really don't want to go down that again. I'm assuming the YA would be a little bit lighter, but honestly, probably not, because the topics that were brought up with children, that is what happens. This is what these kids are dealing with. So I'm just not ready to go back down that very, very dark hole. And my other 3-star pick was Firelight by Sophie Jordan. Now, I originally picked this because for the Book Junkie Trials, you had to have a weakness pick, which was a book that is out of your comfort zone. I picked Firelight because it's about dragons, and I don't read books about dragons. For some reason, they freak me out. But I ended up liking this book a lot. The reason it got 3 stars is not at all to do with the fact that it's about dragons, which was very, very surprising to me. I actually ended up having a pretty good time reading about dragons. It was very interesting. I wanted to know more. The only thing dealing with dragons that did attribute to it getting its 3 stars is that we don't get enough information about dragons. Like, still, now that I've finished this book, I have no idea what size these dragons are. They must be small. That is what I'm deducing from the things that are happening in each scene. But when I think of dragons, I think of a large creature. And they still have to be pretty significant sized, at least human sized. I don't know. It is never once described how big or small these dragons are. So that is the only thing that attributed to the 3 stars. Other than that, the reason that this book is getting 3 stars is that not a whole lot happens in this book. I was enjoying the romance in it. I thought it was interesting, but just not enough happens in this book to give it anything higher than a 3-star. Where this book is basically just like an intro book where we learn all the characters and we learn their circumstances, and I'm assuming that if you continue on with the series, then you ultimately find out what the heck is going on. There is like a ba ending, but it wasn't significant enough for me to give it any higher than 3 stars. I kind of saw it coming. I figured that's kind of what was going to end up happening. So this book was good. I don't think I'm going to continue on with the series just because it does feel a bit dated to me now. And I don't know if I will like the rest of the series, but reading a book that was thought to be out of my comfort zone and it ended up not being too bad is really surprising. I really like that I read it for that fact, and I may check out more dragon books in the future, or at least be less reluctant to picking it up just because it's about dragons. And now on to our 4-star picks. First up, we have Of Poseidon by Anna Banks. Now, this was my book club pick. This is the 3rd time that I read this book. I have given it 5 stars the 2 previous times I read it, but now reading it, I realize just how dated it is and how a little bit problematic it is in terms of the super insta-lovey relationship. So this time I did end up giving it 4 stars. On Goodreads, I did keep the 5 stars just because I do really, really enjoy this book. I do really enjoy the series. I need to finish it. I need to read the very last book in the series. Being totally honest, this book does redeem a 4-star this time. It is really good, but like I said, it's just dated. It's an older YA, so there's lingo used in different circumstances that definitely feel like older YA. It does not feel like a today YA book. I would still definitely recommend this book and recommend the series for you to check out, especially if you are into mermaids. I really love the book, but it's just not a 5-star anymore. I will say, though, that this was the first book in book club that, actually, I don't know if it was the first book, but this is one of the few books in book club that every member enjoyed and is continuing on in the series. Next up, we have Night of Cake and Puppets by Laini Taylor. This is book 2.5 in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, so it is a novella about Zuzana and Mick and their relationship. It is how they ended up dating, and it's such a cute story. The really, really cool thing is that it does have illustrations throughout to describe the story. Like on almost every single page, there's some sort of drawing, or there's like big full page scenes. It was a really cool experience. I first read it on audio and read it in one sitting. I think it only took me like an hour and a half to read it. And then once I found out that the physical edition had illustrations, I went ahead and picked this up and flipped through it. And honestly, it is just such a good experience. The same narrator that has narrated all the other audiobooks did this one, so you still had the same voice for these characters that you've always had. It feels very true and real, and then when you look at the illustrations as well, it just makes everything come to life. Now, the only reason that this book is getting a 4-star is just because it is a novella. It's kind of hard for me to give novellas 5 stars sometimes because it's not a full beginning, middle, end story. This one is just a snippet into their lives, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was so, so cute, but I just didn't have the urge to give it 5 stars. So this one is a 4-star, but it's definitely, definitely worth your time if you love the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series. There was a Daughter of Smoke and Bone read-along that was hosted by a bunch of different booktubers, and they had live shows every month to discuss the book, and we all read it together. So this one was the very last one, which is so, so sad. I am happy that it's over just because I don't like having books that I have to read every month. But it was so fun to join the live shows and chat in the chat room and interact with the host. It was such a good experience, the first time that I've ever done it. So I will definitely be checking out more read-alongs and live shows in the future. The next one is a very buzzworthy book. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone has given it 5 stars and has loved it. And that is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you have not heard of this book, I don't know where you have been. This has been all over the internet, all over BookTube, Instagram, everywhere you go. This book is being featured. Reese Witherspoon even picked it for her book club, as you can see from the Reese Book Club sticker. This book has been a very big deal. This is the same author of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is a book that I absolutely devoured, which is why I picked this up, even though I really didn't think I was going to like it, just like with Evelyn Hugo. But this one did kind of turn out how I thought it was in terms of how I would feel about it. I did not give this book 5 stars. Now, in terms of comparing it to Evelyn Hugo, they are very similar in the fact that you feel like the people are real. Taylor is an amazing, amazing author who is just very, very talented. I definitely want to check out more of her work. However, the subject of this book is what gave it 4 stars. I would never pick up a book that was about a real band. I would never pick up a book about a fictional band. I only picked this book up because it was Taylor Jenkins Reid that wrote it and everyone loved it. So I did really like it. I finished it. I definitely recommend reading it on audio. It has a full cast, which is very, very nice. It definitely feels real. Like I said, the writing is not at all what is giving this a 4-star. It is only the subject matter. I just was not that interested in hearing about this band. The things that are happening are things like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I'm just not that interested or into that kind of subject. So this book got 4 stars for me. I definitely recommend you still pick it up or read another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. But if you already know that a rock and roll band interview is not something that you would normally be interested in, I don't know if you will end up liking this very much. The entire thing is an interview. The band broke up after they just skyrocketed to the top, and then no one has heard from any of them since, and this is the first interview since all of that happened. It takes place in today's times, and yeah, I will say that the ending is like a little heartbreaking and like really put me in my feels. I did enjoy it, but it was definitely not Evelyn Hugo. Next up is a book that I did not intend to read this month, but I went ahead and picked it up, and that is The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. This is a YA graphic novel about a prince who sometimes likes to dress up as a woman, and the dressmaker that ends up making these dresses for him. This book was so very cute. I wanted to read it for August, but I picked something else. So since I already had it in my possession, I decided to just go ahead and read it during the reading rush just to get another book under my belt. And I read it in one sitting. It was so very cute. But the reason it's getting 4 stars and not 5 stars is that when I reflected on my reading and really thought about the story, there's only 2 scenes that made me want to push this into the 5-star, and they both happen back to back at the very end of the book. If there was more things like it throughout the book, then I would have given this 5 stars, but because all of like my real 5-star feelings were right at the end, I just didn't feel right about giving it a 5-star. I definitely recommend you read this book. It is so freaking cute, so good. The art style is really, really nice. I just really enjoyed it, all in full color. It was outstanding, but just everything I loved was right at the end. And if there was like a little bit of that sprinkled about, it would have felt like a true 5-star, but it's a 4-star, but definitely pick it up. And now on to my 5 stars of the month. Now, like I said earlier, it is hard for me to give a novella or a short story 5 stars, but this one made the cut, and it is The King by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Now, I am a bit biased when it comes to this one because Jennifer is my all-time favorite author, but as you guys know, I'm very honest with my opinions. I am upfront when I am biased. When it comes to Jennifer's writing, she really does have 5-star quality, even in her novellas. They always have a beginning, middle, end. They have a flow. It just all works out, and this book did not disappoint. This is from her Wicked series. It is part of the 1001 Dark Nights series as well, which features short stories that can be read as standalones. This book is technically part of a series, but it can be read by itself, and you will understand everything that's happening in the book, as it only kind of gives away things from the main series, and it technically is a sequel to another novella, but at the same time, nothing spoilery happens in these novellas that will take away from the original one, and there's nothing that happens in them that is a continuation of the one before. So it is a standalone. It's very good. I've read book 1 in the Wicked trilogy. Really enjoyed it, so I do need to finish it, but these novellas that are coming out for it, I'm so there for it. They're so interesting, and I really love reading them. So this one is definitely a 5-star for me, easy. The next 5-star comes as no surprise, and that is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince by J.K. Rowling. I am just chugging along, making my way through all of the Harry Potter books. This one did not disappoint. It is usually my least enjoyed movie, but the book did not disappoint. Of course, there are tons and tons of things that happen in it that are not in the movies. I did enjoy it. I feel like a bit more than I do in the movie, but at the same time, the things that are different kind of mess with my mind, because I have been waiting for Snape to finally in the books have his redeeming qualities, and it still has yet to happen. In this one, it is pretty bad, and I totally understand now why all of the Harry Potter fans were so distraught and depressed when this book came out. I remember it very vividly when this one came out, and everyone telling me that a main character dies, but it's not Harry, and you'll find out when you read it, which I'm just now reading it. So I totally understand why people have the feelings that they do when it comes to this book and when it comes to Snape. In the movies, though, Snape is a really liked character. He's one of my favorite characters from the movies. He is so funny. I love his dark, snarky, rude behavior. But in the books, he is just a villain. And it's very hard for me in this book to still see that continue because I just want him to be the character who had a terrible childhood, bullied by Harry's dad, and made some mistakes that he regrets. And I'm just not seeing it. I'm really, really anxious to read the last book. I'm hoping that my feelings for Snape changes because one of my best friends read all the books when they came out. She is a super non-Snape fan. She didn't like the movies that much because they glorify Snape, and she's not about that. And now I'm starting to understand where her feelings are coming from, because if I would have read the books, I would have felt the same way about Snape. And I just am so happy in that sense that I did watch the movies first because I love Snape. And the last 5-star book for this month and the best book of the month. You guys, oh my goodness, I don't even know what to say about this book. I picked it for the reading rush as to complete the challenge of reading a book that you meant to read last year. I meant to read this book last year, the year before that, ever since it came out. I pre-ordered it and still never picked it up. Always looked at my shelf like, one day you'll happen. It finally happened this month, and it was just the best freaking experience I've ever had. And that book is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. You guys, this book was so freaking amazing. I cannot wait for Wayward Son. I just need more Simon and Baz in my life. I understand all the hype now. I cannot even with this book. I decided to go ahead and start annotating again because of this book. It just means so very much to me. I loved every second of it. To be honest, though, the beginning was a little bit difficult for me to get into. It took a while for me to fully commit to the book because I was also reading Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince at the same time. So you can definitely see and recognize the Harry Potter inspiration throughout it. So it did kind of like mess with me a bit because it is similar to Harry Potter, but it is not a retelling of Harry Potter. So there are a whole lot of different things happening that I was like, wait, I'm so confused. Because this book really does read like Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince in terms of everything that is going on. You're definitely like jumping right into the middle of a story that you never previously read. It's as if you picked up the 6th book in Harry Potter and just started reading for the very first time. So it does take a minute to get into, but once you do, guys, it is just so amazing, so worth it. I just loved it so very much. It just means all the things to me. I don't even know what else to say. This book was just absolutely fantastic. I am so happy that I finally read it. It means so much to me, and I love that I read it during this whole Harry Potter reading for the first time. But I also am just like kicking myself for not reading it sooner because I could have been just in love with these characters for so long. I am happy though that I didn't read it when it first came out because how long did it take for us to get Wayward Son? I'm glad I'm not one of those people who's been waiting. But at the same time, the way the book ends, it could just end this way. I understand why there's another one because everyone loves it and they just want more. But it doesn't end in a way where you need a sequel. Alright guys, that is everything that I read in the month of July. It was a really great reading month. I'm very, very sad that I failed the Book Junkie trials because I was doing so freaking well, you guys. I read all the books for all of the challenges except for the very last one because of that freaking group book. As far as the reading rush went, I didn't do as well as I anticipated. I finished Carry On during it, started Firelight, read The Prince and the Dressmaker, and that was it. So I definitely didn't do as well as I anticipated, but I really, really enjoyed my experience. I will definitely be participating in the future. Really, really enjoyed it. Such a fun readathon, and overall, I still succeeded. I completed a lot of the badges. I had a fantastic time, and that's really all that matters. If you guys like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, you want to see more bookish content from me, please hit that subscription button. And if you want to be notified as soon as my videos go live here on YouTube, hit the notification bell. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!